Hi, this is John Liu with H&M Realty Group. If you haven't seen any of my previous videos, this is my assistant, Jordan, and she'll be helping us with the comedic relief for this presentation. Say hi.
Much better. Hi.
First and foremost, I want to thank you for joining us in this presentation. Whether you're just getting started on your home search or you're in the thick of it, I'm confident that tackling these common myths will help you not only information-wise, but also help alleviate some of the stress and doubt associated with these real estate transactions. So to give you a little bit of background about me, I'm a real estate agent and investor. I got started in real estate from the consumer side, just like you. I was a practicing attorney and I purchased several properties as I moved around, and I also bought some for investments. It's really through these experiences, the good and bad, that pushed me towards focusing on real estate. I wanted to take what I had learned to help people like you navigate through the complex real estate transaction. It is my hope that you could avoid some of the headaches that I went through counseling and education. So with that, let's get started. It's commonly believed that you need a 20% down payment to get a mortgage, and that used to be the case. But today, you really need to differentiate whether you're getting an investment property or a property for you to live in. If it's an investment property, you're probably going to need 20% or more in order to get a mortgage on it. But if you're talking about a primary residence for you, there are tons of loan programs that will allow for little to nothing down. If you really think about it, a down payment is just one way for a lender to mitigate some of the risks of lending. By requiring you to put money down, they put you in a better equity position, so if there's a dip in the market, you're not as susceptible to those risks. It also makes you have some skin in the game so that you're not going to just walk away from a property. How much you're going to need to put down to get a mortgage is really going to depend on your credit profile and the amount of risk that a lender is going to be willing to take on you. Which leads me to the second common myth that I see. There's this common misconception that you need an 800 plus credit score in order to get a loan. With a few exceptions, you'll get top tier rates and terms on a loan with anything above a 740 credit score. Now, as you go down the credit score ladder, obviously your rates and terms are going to get less favorable, but you could still qualify for a loan. There are loan programs that will allow borrowers to qualify with scores as low as 600. There are thousands of loan programs out there, and every program has different qualifications and requirements. That's why it's so important for you to talk to a lender as the first step in your home buying journey so that you can figure out exactly what you could borrow. After bottoming out in 2011, home prices have steadily gone up for nearly a decade. I can't tell you the number of times that I've talked to buyers who said that they wanted to buy, they were ready to buy, but they wanted to wait for a dip in the market. I completely understand where this sentiment comes from. I did it myself. Back in 2016, my daughter was just born and my wife and I were looking for a property with a bigger backyard so that our daughter could play in it. Well, we got into negotiations and we were about $15,000 apart on the deal. As we were talking about what we should do next, we decided that we would step back. After all, the market had been going up for about 5 years at that point, and we had just seen the prices being so low, so it was tough to pay that extra little premium. Well, I looked at that property recently, and we're way priced out of it now. In fact, we'd need about a 15 to 20% correction in order to even be back to where we could have picked up the property in 2016. So the problem with waiting for a dip is, one, we don't know when that dip is coming, and two, we don't know how big of a dip it's going to be. Let's say today the market goes down 10%. Well, I'm still in a worse position than I would have been in 2016. There's a common saying in investing that it's a fool's errand to try to time the market. The same thing applies in real estate. The reality is that no one knows when a market correction is going to come, how big that correction is going to be, and what the other factors are going to be in those situations. What if interest rates happen to skyrocket right when a dip happens? Well, those increases in purchasing costs could offset any of the gains that you would get from the dip. There's so many factors that have to perfectly align for you to effectively time the market. And that's why I tell my clients to focus on what you can control. You should focus on coming up with a budget that you're comfortable with and not going to be overextended. So if there are things that happen, you'll still be able to make your payments. You should focus on finding a property that suits your long-term needs so that you're not going to be as susceptible to market fluctuations. Let's say you were unlucky enough to buy a property at the peak in 2006. Well, if you were able to hold on to the property until about 2016, 2017, you would have weathered the storm and been able to break even or even gain a little bit of appreciation over that time. That's why when you're looking to purchase a property, it's important to look at what the worst case scenario is and be able to sustain through that. Historically speaking, it's true that dollar for dollar, it was cheaper to rent than to own. But more recently, rental rates have continued to rise to the point that nationally, it's actually cheaper to own than to rent. I know this sounds outlandish for those of you who are on the coast, but in many parts of the US, the price to rent ratios are much more favorable. For example, I have rental units in Ohio where the rents I collect are much higher than the mortgages that I pay on them. So this begs the question of whether it's better to rent or to purchase if you're in a market like California or New York. Again, speaking dollar for dollar, in places like California, it is going to cost more to pay your mortgage payments on a house than it would to rent that same house. But that's only looking at one piece of the picture. The Federal Reserve did a study between 2013 and 2016 and found that the net worth of homeowners was about $230,000, while renters had a net worth of about $5,000. More importantly, that study found that over the time period of 2013 to 2016, the net worth of homeowners increased by about 15%, whereas the net worth of renters actually decreased by about 5%. So what's going on here? Are homeowners just more responsible? Maybe they're better savers? Well, a more recent study from Harvard University actually showed that the disparity is growing. In this study, they looked at people at retirement age and found that homeowners had a net worth of about $320,000, whereas renters had about $6,700. The more telling part of this study is that homeowners had about half of their net worth tied to their home equity. And that's the thing about home ownership. It's a type of forced savings. Look, whether you rent or buy, you're going to pay at the beginning of every month so that you won't end up on the street. Where that money goes is where the big difference is. When you're renting, 100% of that goes towards your landlord. When you're paying a mortgage, on the other hand, a portion of that's going to go to pay off interest, the other part of it's going to go to pay down principal. As your loan balance decreases, the equity in your home increases, and your net worth also increases. There's also tax savings involved with home ownership. Depending on your situation, you can deduct things like mortgage interest, property taxes, expenses. This means that homeowners keep more of their hard-earned money and give less to Uncle Sam than renters do. It's a combination of this forced savings and tax advantages that I think is going to make the big difference between homeowners and renters and their net worth. Who doesn't love getting a great deal? There's something really satisfying about being able to purchase something at a steep discount. That's why my home looks like this around Black Friday and holiday sales. But unlike retail sales, where prices are mostly set, real estate is a completely different animal. The price tag for any particular home is set by each individual homeowner when they sell it. That means any seller is free to list their home for $1 or $1 trillion. That's because the price tag really has no bearing on the actual value of any given property. At the end of the day, the list price is really just a marketing mechanism that can be used to drive interest in a home. That's why when we list properties, we come up with a strategy depending on the circumstances, condition, and features of a property and their homeowners to determine where we should list it. Sometimes that means that we list it for under market value, sometimes we list it for over market value, and sometimes we price it right at what we believe to be market value. That's why it's such a mistake to rely on the list price to determine how much you should pay for a property. If you end up paying a little bit over the list price for a property that's listed for under market, that's not such a bad deal. On the flip side of that, even if you get a property for under list price, but it's marketed way over what it should be, it doesn't mean that you're getting a good deal. Instead of looking at the list price to determine how much you should pay for a property, you should look at the value of a property based on comparable sales and then adjust them based on the features and conditions of the property. You should use that number to determine whether you're getting a good deal or not the list price. So there you have it. Now you're equipped to tackle some of the most common myths about home buying. Remember though, that your situation, just like everyone else, is going to be unique. You should tailor your home buying strategy to your particular needs. Remember that cookie cutter strategies end up with cookie cutter results. Contact me for a free, no obligation consultation, and we can get you set up with a customized plan that suits your needs. Once again, this is John Liu with H&M Realty Group. Thanks for watching.